Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Ryan Phillips-Page, the co-founder of Operation Water. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Devin.
Well, Ryan, I love your approach to solving the global water crisis. There are 700 million people who lack good access to clean water. And given the scale of that problem, small-scale solutions may be important at the margins, but we've got to have large-scale solutions to really solve this problem. So tell us about your work.
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, there's a lot of people who lack access to clean water, and the nonprofit approach has traditionally been centered on sinking wells that provide enough water for one village, and it's not scalable, so you can't provide access to the next village if there were money to do that. Now, those projects often break after 2 or 3 or 4 years, and those people are left without clean water again. So while that provides a lot of really necessary relief, it's really a Band-Aid solution. We really need infrastructure, as we have in this country. In America, across Europe, and most of the Western world, we've got proper infrastructure and solved this problem 150 years ago. Technologies exist, they're there, they're just not being deployed in Africa, for instance, or in Southeast Asia for that matter, due to a lack of sovereign wealth and a lack of ability to attract investors.
So really the innovation you're deploying is in your financing. So tell us about your financing innovation.
So we're taking a public-private partnership approach, which is what I've been doing for the past 6 years in putting together power infrastructure deals around Africa. That works in the power sector because you can make quite a bit of good money as an investor. You can make north of 20% annualized returns. However, if you do that for water, you're only able to call it 5% returns. And on some projects, you won't be able to make a return. So you're really not able to attract the sort of high yield seeking investor that's typically looking to invest in Africa. Then on the other end of the spectrum, as I just covered, the nonprofit approach with donations is just throwing some aid at the cause, but it's not really moving the needle. So we said, well, why don't we, instead of target high yield seeking investors, target those philanthropists that really want to do good and end the global water crisis, but aren't sure of any other solution to do it. And hey, those people who give us their money can get their money back and perhaps even get a return, or they can keep it with us and continue to deliver more projects in the future. So we haven't so much created a new model, it's rather applying a tried and true model that's developing infrastructure throughout the developing world, but targeting a new sort of impact investor and philanthropists instead of the traditional investors looking to do work in Africa.
So as you think about what you're doing, can you give us a specific example of a project you're working on now or have recently completed?
Absolutely. So we have just launched our organization in January, and we're looking at 3 deals right now. We're looking at a deal in Uganda and in Mozambique and in Gabon. There's no shortage of projects, as you can imagine. I've met with many ministers of water over the past 6 years, and I've seen their strategic priority list of projects. And unfortunately, I've seen the same ministers a couple of years later, and the same projects are on the list because they are not getting done. Projects that we're looking at aren't necessarily in the most rural areas initially. They're in urban and peri-urban areas. But again, given that it's scalable, as money and funding allows us to reach that next village, we can reach more remote areas over time. But it's not something that we're targeting right away. So it is a bit of a shortcoming because we realize that those are the people in the most dire of need.
Tell us a little bit more about the Uganda Project, for instance.
So everything's still a little bit confidential because we haven't signed everything yet, but we are looking at working with disadvantaged communities and pulling them all into one region where we plan to work and sign up the relevant stakeholders who want to buy power, work with the various NGOs that are out there that are willing to subsidize the cost for those people who can't afford the cost of water, and then wrapping it into one project so that we can do a feasibility study to determine where the water needs to come from to provide water to the million or so people that we're going to target. Make sure that it's sustainable, not just dig a hole. If there's water, let them have water until it runs out or until it breaks. We take a long-term approach and do a really, really detailed feasibility study.
So would your process include water treatment plants, distribution? What's the scope?
Absolutely. Every project is different, to be perfectly honest. Hate to take the easy way out, but every project truly is different. But certainly using water treatment facilities, pipes to bring that water large distances, using horizontal drilling and and technologies that are available today that were not available when we did it in the US 150 years ago.
So it would be a combination of new and old technologies to deliver infrastructure that would work essentially like it does here in the States or in Western Europe.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's fascinating to see what you're doing. What are some of the big challenges that you're facing?
The big challenges are that Africa, for instance, is where we're going to start, and that's where 60% of the global water crisis persists. The other big areas are in Southeast Asia, and then a bit in Oceania and Latin America and Caribbean, but 60% of that need is really in Africa. So we're going to start there, and that's someplace where I am very familiar with and have met with many of the ministers. Traveling across a great distance of land, and all of these countries are very different. There's 54 different countries in Africa. So not all of them have public-private partnership legal frameworks set up. So in those countries, we need to open the dialogue and talk to them about creating public-private partnership legislation to govern such projects. And then other areas where they do have such legislature, we can start right away, but we still need to explain to them how we intend to do this and that we need to be taking a meaningful stake in this special purpose vehicle that we create that will own the concession for the project. And while they understand it in power, they haven't really seen it in water. Because again, people are usually looking to make a lot of money off of this, and we are not. We're really trying to deliver a social good. So it's gaining their trust and working through a large continent to serve people who need it very badly in often remote areas is very challenging.
It does seem to me that your model, while it doesn't seem like you're designing this to make a fortune for you or for the investors, it should have the potential to provide a reliable cash flow and ultimately a return to investors, given that this is like a utility and you'll have the leverage to be able to collect from your customers, especially if you have the help of NGOs to subsidize some of the operations. Am I thinking about that right?
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, we're planning on partnering with the government. So we are not replacing the government. We need the government to serve a very big need. We're going to work with the utility. So basically how it works is we will raise the money from development finance institutions and philanthropists and social impact investors, export credit agencies, hire a contractor to build the project, and then we will sell the water in bulk to the utility, who then buys the water from us, goes and sells it to their people. comes back and should have sufficient money to buy the next month worth of water from us. So they engage in a water purchase agreement, and we need the government to guarantee the obligations under the water purchase agreement of the utility by providing us with the Ministry of Finance guarantee. So we are very much working with the government. We're not trying to replace them. There's a big role for them to play, and we want them to improve. And at the end of a 15, 20-year concession, the asset is theirs. It becomes a government-owned asset. And the returns that we can give, as you mentioned, should be steady. Again, every project is different, but we envision about a 3 to 5% return on our money. And again, it will be backed by a Ministry of Finance guarantee. So in the event that they wish not to pay or cannot pay, then we will get paid still.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Ryan, this is just a fascinating discussion, but we have a few minutes before we wrap up. I want to ask you a couple of more personal insights.
Sure.
Clearly, you are becoming a role model for other people as you create this new venture to serve people in the developing world. But who do you look up to as a role model?
Who do I look up to? Well, one guy I admire is Blake Mycoskie. I'm sure you know him. He's the founder and chief shoe giver at Tom's Shoes. He's a real pioneer in social entrepreneurship, and what he's managed to do with this one-for-one model and engage the power of consumerism to provide an ultimate social good is, while very simple, incredibly effective. And we're definitely looking at finding ways to embrace the power of consumerism as well to help fund Operation Water at some stage as well.
That's great. Now, Ryan, there are a lot of people who recognize that access to water is a problem, but very few of us actually go out and create a company to solve the problem. Why did you feel compelled to do this?
Well, Devin, more people die every day as a result of lack of access to clean water and sanitation than malaria, HIV, AIDS, and measles combined.
Wow.
More than 80% of the hospital beds across the globe are filled with people that are there because of a waterborne disease. It's a problem that is solvable. We have the technologies. They are available. It's really a poverty and corruption issue. It's not even a water scarcity issue. Across Africa, they're using less than 5% of their water table. So the water is there. It just needs to be treated and distributed. And the work that I've been doing in mainly the power infrastructure space over the last 6 years, and being exposed to these structures and how they can be employed to provide water, I just figured I'm in as good of a position as anybody to get these deals done. So away I go.
Fantastic. Well, Ryan, one last question. We ask all of our guests for what I call an impact hack, some tip that would help us to do more good in the world. What's your impact hack?
My impact hack. I believe the mind, the body, and the soul are very connected. So in order to allow your mind to be as impactful as possible, I think you really need to take care of your body and your soul. So that means exercising almost every day, eating healthy, sleeping 8 hours a day, and then for your soul, spending time with loved ones and doing things that inspire you, such as travel, to make sure that your mind and soul are both very rich. And then your mind can focus on what it needs to do.
No, that's great insight. Great insight. I appreciate that. Well, before you go, Ryan, please tell people how they can learn more about Operation Water and connect with you personally.
Absolutely. Well, our website is operationwater.org, and I can be reached at ryan.phillips-page at operationwater.org or info@operationwater.org.
Great. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us today. We wish you every success in solving this big problem of access to clean water around the world.
Thanks, Devin. Much appreciated.
All righty. Let's do some good.